Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Segal. This is a video about some theories I have on how to learn languages more quickly. They are things that worked for me. Um, if you are not someone who speaks foreign languages, you may think about direct translations from, in this case, Italian. It's what I'll be using as the target language, from Italian to English and back. And one of the reasons that I'm able to learn languages very quickly is because I tap into the power of not doing that direct translation. And I know there's quite an advantage to knowing other Romance languages, but there are ways to do it without that. Um, it only takes curiosity and a willingness to go down the rabbit hole, if you will. And I know that many people that I know love to go down rabbit holes. Um, many people in my life find that extremely interesting. So I'm going to share some things that worked for me. Okay. Oops. This is a slide from back in the day when I was trying to learn how to say duemila correctly. Because as you now know, in all my Italian videos, I say 2024, and I got very good at that. So this is just this whole slide presentation, and you won't see all of it. It's just like a running list of all the things that occur to me that I want to explore in Italian. So here's where we are today. Predictable and prevedibile, which if you don't know any other Romance languages and you're not used to language learning, they sound very different from each other. And in fact, they are different because they come from different places. The etymology back to Latin is different. So I'm going to show you that. So the word dictate or predict, those are words we continue to use in English. And we come to predictable from that. Dictable used to be a word in Middle English. Dictate, predict means foretell. That's why I have that there. We also say indictable, which is interesting because you'd think it would be indictable. It's from the Latin, but it came up through French and so therefore changed its pronunciation. I'm not sure that many English speakers even think about the fact that indictable is related to predictable. Indictare, I think it's how you say it in Latin, is acute to accuse, right? So indictable, you're liable to accusement. And you can think of all the, sorry, yes, liable to indictment. And you can think of all the ways that that word plays out with different permutations in English. So pray, I learned how to say this and I forget. Pry, I think it's pry before, and dicere, to say, dicere. I don't speak Latin, so I don't know how to pronounce them. But those two pieces go together to create predict and predictable. While in Italian, prevedibile is from pry and videre or videre. So it's to pre-see. Vedibile is visible, prevedibile is previsible. So it's not that you are predicting, you are pre-seeing. And if you think about it that way, you don't have to go directly from predictable to prevedibile and say, well, how do I, it doesn't sound anything like the English. How do I possibly learn this? Because you learn it through thinking about, well, how do I break this word down? And it's not always obvious. It is so not always obvious, but the more you start to see the patterns in the language, the easier it gets. So here's an example of when I did not use that approach, I'll say. I was doing a video about cuffie, which are headphones. I'll put the link below in the description. Cuffie, and I was trying to pronounce this word, which means foldable. Foldable. Piego. Now I'm gonna have hard time pronouncing it, even though I've learned it because I'm now thinking about how hard it was the first time. Piegevole, 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 piegevole. I mean, I was like, I'm trying to even think of when I first saw the word, I was like, okay, that's a G, that's a hard G because there's an H there. Vole, piegevole. And finally, as I said it, I was like, piegevole, okay. Foldable headphones, cuffie piegevole. So I'm sharing this because I'm not like up here teaching you, whoever's viewing this. Okay, so I've learned. I hate, polyglots, or even polyglots in quotes, who just take the best parts of whatever they do and put that online. And oh, I'm such a brilliant, language learner. It's hard for everybody. You need to learn patterns. Even if you've learned them in another language, you need to learn them again in a new language, but then it gets easier. In one point in one of my Italian videos, I said, it's like learning how to walk before you run. And not just as a child, but say you wanted to run the Boston Marathon, you're not going to start by running 5 miles a week. You're going to start by walking a block and then running a block and then walking a block and then running a block. I'm better at saying that than doing it, but I know how to do it with languages, and I have started to do it. Yeah, and then we get to this slide where it looks a bit overwhelming. These are, but these words, when I started looking, and piegevole is down in the middle bottom, piegevole, I realized, oh, it's obvious how to say this word because there's a huge pattern, right, to how the English words change to the Italian words. And prevedibile, it's prevedibile. You can see it in advance. You can anticipate it. Because vole is very often a replacement for able in English. So the third word down, amichevole, if you know the word amici or amico or amica. Amici is friends. Amiche, women friends. Never actually used that word, but it must be because that's the pattern. Amico, male friend. Amica, female friend. Amichevole, it's spelled with an H because that's how you pronounce it. Amichevole, friendly. But if you first looked at that word, you might have the same response that I did, like, oh, this is a word I've never seen. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Piegevole, amichevole. Once you start to see the patterns, it becomes so much easier. That being said, I am someone who loves to see systems. And so a list like this, I love it because I can go and so if I go to piegevole and I might not say it exactly right because now I'm speaking English, but piegevole. If I go down to the bottom and I go up to the L's, the third one, and again, I might not say it right because I'm not in my Italian groove, but lusingevole. So you see that that's pronounced the same way. And I'll just say a few of them, starting from the top, da capo, I think it is. Accomodevole, aghevole, amichevole, ammirevole, arrendevole, amorevole, antistrugiolevole. So that one, if you go down to the fourth list and the second word up, so I'll wait for you to get there. It's in the S's, fourth column over. Strucciolevole. I'm still working on pronouncing this one, but slippery. And then anti-strucciolevole. They say Italian's always easy to pronounce, but I have to say this one is, even once you get it, it's a lot of consonants together. That's very uncommon in Italian. Antistruccevole. No, antistrucciolevole. Yeah. Bastevole, biasimevole, passionevole, cagionevole, cagionevole. So that GI is a J sound there. There's no I pronounced. cedevole, colpevole, commendevole, compassionevole. So some of these words might look similar to words that you already know in English. And I tried to make a shorter list. This is just the words, the ones here, if you wanted to screenshot this slide, are the ones that are going to be in the shorter list, the ones that are here and in bold. So here's the shorter list. Amichevole, I spoke about that one already. Ammirevole, so admirable, admirable. The DM in English often becomes an MM in Italian. So that's just, again, a pattern that you'll learn if you start to learn more words. Amorevole, loving, colpevole, guilty, but also culpable. That's why I have these words in blue. So colpevole, incolpevole, guilty and innocent, irragionevole, ragionevole, irrational and, unreasonable and reasonable. I believe, now I'm actually doubting myself and I want to check. And I want to say something about that as well, but I will check it again first. Yes, reasonable. What I wanted to say about that is this. I have mentioned in other videos, probably more likely in Italian, but if you're not an Italian speaker, I'll say it now. I don't worry so much if I mess up a word when I'm reading or when I'm speaking. If you've heard my Italian videos, I make a bunch of mistakes. I know that the only problem with making mistakes is if you start to really develop a habit and then you continue to make that mistake forever in the language. But the first 10 times or so that you're learning a word, you may learn it and you may need to relearn it and you may need to relearn it and you may need to relearn it. And if you keep using it enough, you will catch the hang of it. So just the very fact that I made this, that I had this doubt and I double check already is planting in my head even more. Okay, so this word is unreasonable, ragionevole. So then I would be, reasonable, and then irragionevole, unreasonable. So going back to the list, commendevole, compassionevole, considerevole, convenevole, convenient. That one's a little less obvious. Durevole, immutevole, incantevole. So this one is like delightful, but it also means enchanting. So incantevole, again, if you're thinking about, this is actually English, but enchanting and incantevole, you're not trying to get an exact comparison necessarily. I would say incantevole, and from what I've seen, is more often delightful than enchanting. But that's how you can give yourself an easy way to remember the word. Innumerevole, innumerable, lamentevole, lamentable, meritevole, deserving. So we don't have well, actually, I don't know. I didn't check. I don't think we have meritable in English. I always think we don't have these words, and then it turns out that we actually do, or they were in Middle English and they're no longer used anymore, or they're Scrabble words by now that only people would use in Scrabble, but not in actual English. You might find them in a Jane Austen book or something, but you wouldn't normally use them in conversation. I don't know where meritable, if that word exists in English, comes out. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. Minacevole. This is another one. So these three are in yellow highlighting because if you look at the word, I think the translation that normally used is threatening. But if you think of menacing, minacevole, it becomes easier to remember as well. Miserevole, miserable. And if you know Les Miserables, you know miserevole. Maybe that brings the word closer as well. That's really what I'm talking about here is how do I bring the word closer to something I already know so it doesn't seem so foreign and it's easier to remember. Notevole, onorevole, piacevole. If you know mi piace, it's pleasing to me. Piacevole, pleasing. Adjective versus mi piace is the verb form, but Anyway, profittevole, profitable, rimarchevole, remarkable. Oops, this is not part of this presentation or this conversation. This was something different, but yeah, so I have it open. I'll just talk about it. French and Italian, I was thinking about how I was thinking about how this always screws me up because je ne la savais pas means I don't know it. But perché ne avete parlato means why did you talk about it? You plural. But it's not why didn't you talk about it? And I always think that it is. So there we go. And that was my little foray, if you will, into my theories about how you can speed up your language learning by bringing it closer to you. And I do want to say, for anybody who might be thinking this, because I always have my little, doubters in my own head, like, Anne-Marie, why did you spend so much time putting this slide presentation together if you're saying this is kind of just something you want to do a little bit on the side, a few minutes here and there? I did not spend a lot of time putting this slide presentation together. I spent a lot of time creating that word list for myself, but even then it wasn't very long. I actually went to a site which has words that end in OLE, and it was an Italian Scrabble site so that you could build Scrabble words more easily. And then I went through, and every time that I saw a word that was interesting to me in the list, and they had different letters of words, so I clicked through, the 7 letters and the 8 letters and the 9 letters, I would just write it down in the notes app on my phone as a way to reinforce the word. And I don't know, that was probably half an hour this morning because my dog woke me up at 5 a.m. and nothing else that I really wanted to do at that moment. My husband was on the treadmill, which I will be shortly, without this clothing on, of course. And so I made that list and then I just dropped it into PowerPoint. I'm saying that because maybe you want to use a screenshot, or maybe you'd like to create your own lists of things, because there are lots of patterns like this. And if one of the things so this is passive learning. If you're listening to this video, you're passively taking in information about Italian and about how to learn languages. But the active learning is when you write it down yourself or you speak yourself and you're trying to remember it. So piacevole, 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 or prevedibile, prevedibile, prevedibile. Just hearing it is part of the way that we learn, but then saying it again or writing it for yourself, certainly helpful. So anyway, thank you for listening. Ci vediamo. We'll see each other again, as they often, I've seen many people end videos that way, and I'm starting to do that sometimes in my Italian videos. And of course, hopefully, ciao, hello, and goodbye. So ciao.